today, Tony?
I am great.
I realize we're dressed alike.
We
Call
did.
each other
We
or something
called
like
each
this?
other.
I know.
Very mustardy Phil.
I do, and that's in honor of Xavier Mustard Shorts.
That's right.
Our producer.
Our producer.
We decided to wear our mustard shirts.
We support you, my friend. We're supporting you.
This episode is really about the psychology of the barbecue. I think a lot of people would just think like, wait, there's a psychology? Because, yeah, there's usually a thought process that goes behind what I do. I may look stupid, but I actually think through this stuff.
Nobody's saying that, Kevin. Nobody's saying
but
that.
it was one of those things where how the barbecue's evolved, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode.
Let's set this
welcome
up a little bit.
Yeah, well, welcome to the My Warped Life podcast. I guess we should say what we're on today. My Warped Life podcast, episode number 4.
That's right. So a lot of people like me who didn't grow up through the Warped Tour but caught the tail end of it, there was the famous Warped Tour barbecue. And this episode, we're going to talk about how it came about, what your vision was for it initially, and how you used it as a tool. And I think it's a fascinating story.
Well, I think it's one of those things you start thinking about, like, it goes back to the last episode when we talked about how I met Lisa Brownlee and how they weren't allowed to come and take showers backstage. And they weren't allowed to do certain things. And I was like, we're all part of a community. So how do you bring that community together? A lot of times where I grew up out in Claremont, that's kind of how we came together. Someone would, bring an instrument over and another person bring an instrument over. And it always seemed like it was in my backyard. I had a, backyard and I barbecued. It was like even back then we had so few days off. Most people were working shows or regular jobs that we would actually all gather and have a barbecue. And it was like, who knew who was going to come to the barbecue?
Sure.
And so we kind of grew up that way in Claremont. And about in 1985, 86, I moved over to Hawaii for a while ago. And we'll be having a guest on the show, Pepper, who is a band from Hawaii.
Badass band. If you've not seen them live, Google them. Live performances at the Warped Tour. They are just explosive.
Yeah.
Amazing band.
Yeah, great people, too. And we're going to be also having Carlos Donohue, who has to get credit for the first barbecues on Warped Tour.
That's right.
So we've invited him. We had a little problem with some of his audio, but we'll get through that because he's such an important part. And then kind of a blending of an artist and someone who's gone on to do great things. Beebs of Beebs and Her Moneymakers, who we'll be talking about her charity.
Another great band.
And another great band who played multiple barbecues. So
and played the Warped Tour, too. Great shows at the Warped Tour. Another one to search.
Yeah. Sometimes I booked good bands on the Warped Tour.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Once in a while, I'd get it right.
You get lucky.
I'd get lucky.
My vision for this show, as we get out of this COVID, is we're going to bring the barbecue back, baby.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to that time here, and we're all mastering, and we'll move around the country. That's what time. Actually, we talked about that. Like, maybe there wouldn't be any more Warped Tours, but we would just show up at a parking lot and barbecue somewhere. Like, invite everyone down, like all our old friends, like the promoters, the security guards, everyone that would come
We
down.
just happen to have 5 or 6 cameras here. We have a full Pro Tools rig.
Yeah,
Why don't somebody pick up a guitar and play a
some
song?
music.
Yeah, this is going to happen, baby.
So just wait. Let's bring this Carlos. Carlos was a character from our scene.
How it all began.
Well, I mean, I learned, and barbecue was a big part of my life in Brazil. Growing up, at least once a week, and usually on a Sunday, families and friends would get together, and all people would barbecue every Sunday. It would be a big event. You'd watch Formula One and or whatever sporting event. And it always centered around the barbecue. And that was something that I always enjoyed and learned a lot from in Brazil, and kind of have carried on to this day. And barbecue has always been a big part of my life.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting how you go around the world, and I've been lucky to go to Brazil recently, that barbecue is like the gathering point.
Of course it is. That's why they have such high cholesterol. And
well, there's a balance to everything. But Carlos kind of developed the barbecue out of what he believed was a necessity.
Originally, I remember there was a very big lack of food, and if I didn't want to eat the hose water pasta or the bologna sandwich or the banana for dinner, you kind of had to take matters into your own hands. So we started a barbecue. I remember getting some sort of a buyout from Reed Glick, who was the tour accountant at the time, I think.
You can't say the word Reed Glick without people laughing for many reasons. So.
Oh yeah.
I think you guys had a special recipe smoothie for him at one point.
Yes, he did have a special one. He did.
We're hearing his audio is a little out there, but the way you said it started was him out of necessity, just needing to have a little barbecue. But what changed? Was it more of an exclusive thing, or?
Well, I think really for Carlos, you have to realize everyone had a side hustle. Warped Tour, there was a lot of side hustles going on. We're going to explore those at some future episode.
Have an whole episode that says side hustle.
This kind of, it was not, there was this general sense, but someone like Carlos, there was always a little undertone to the reasoning.
We had a laminate, and we all, no one had a lot of money back then, so everyone would chip in money. And at some point, to control it as it got bigger, I had a laminate with a punch card on it, and you would buy as many punches to eat every day. And then we just punch holes in it, and you could come into the barbecue and eat whatever you wanted.
Right on. So was it like a communal thing, or was he making a little scratch?
I think he was probably making a little. Carlos, it wasn't a lot, but he made it. It was okay. He was putting in the effort. People enjoyed it.
I mean, the way he brings it up, it sounds like it was kind of a communal thing that they were just all trying to get together, right?
Back then, it was really interesting with the Warped Tour because you had a lot of these old school bands, and Carlos worked for some of those older bands,
right?
And
which ones specifically?
Oh God, he was working for Lagwagon. He was working for just a lot of the old punk bands.
Right.
I think he actually talks about some of the bands he worked for. The barbecue kind of was like this area, and it kind of got known as like Lagwagon barbecue. They had this saying called the circle of hate. Kind of, it was almost this thing where they parked their tour buses in a circle around it. Like they'll be inside the circle of hate. You gotta you had to kind of get invited into the circle of hate. It was like the grumpy old punk, like the grumpy punks would be all in there. And, so then, so Carly, but Warp was always about kind of a barter system. And Carlos expanded on that barter system.
I would make boxes. I would just get big, like the bottom of cardboard boxes, and fill it with 20 of my specialty drink, which is the fog cutter, with umbrellas and straws, and I would ride it around on a bicycle later on my little motorcycle and just kind of drop them off, hand them off to different places, come by the office, come by merch tents, and just kind of try to make everybody happy and my friends happy. And, it just, like you were saying, there was a barter system that you just kind of help everybody out. They appreciated it, and they would help you back.
The fog cutter?
The fog cutter. It's loosely
He was
termed.
just getting everybody drunk, which I have no problem with.
And I think you're going to see this through this thing. There was these drinks that were created on Warped Tour that kind of might have been it's not something you would have at one of the hotels you tend to frequent or something. These were completely, thought up, made up on the spot, sometimes using those sponsored drinks that we would get dropped off.
Or just using whatever was readily available.
Yeah, and a lot of times that was that sponsored drink that maybe was dropped off backstage.
Once Carlos had this thing going, it sounded like it was a very exclusive thing for some of the older punk bands, but how did it become like the famous Kevin Barbecue, where it was like everybody was in, everybody got to meet?
That's how I kind of look. I went back through this whole mindset of okay, bringing people together, sneaking people, making sure everyone could take a shower on Warped Tour. Everyone would have dinner on Warped Tour. But this gathering at the end of the day, everyone, Warped Tour was hard,
Yeah, like you were talking about doing 25 shows day after day, every day for 25. That's hard.
And a lot of people would get mad and why did you? And I go, well, it was an economic balance to keep that tour on the road. So some people would complain, but they really didn't understand that most of the bands liked working every day.
Right.
They didn't have to spend money when they were a day off in hotels.
Sure.
It was usually some grumpy old merch guy that'd been on the road too long or something, to be honest, or a guitar tech. Guitar techs hated me. Techs hate me.
Why?
Because techs are A personalities. They like to sit and work on the gear all day long.
Sure.
I used to have a saying when I was working in arenas, if I really wanted to upset my guitar techs, their cases would be one way, and the next day I would turn them this way. That's their lives. They and that's what you need, a person that works on that equipment.
Right,
make it sound
shows
perfect.
don't run without
And
them.
all of a sudden, I'm in some dusty, dirty field. I've got them playing at all different times of the day. So there's always a group of people that aren't going to like you. So I always got back at them a little bit, because if the guys that were like, I could tell like really hated me the most, I'd walk by and pretend I was talking on the radio, and I knew their set time, and I would say like, "Oh, looks like the Storms are going to be here at 1:25 in the afternoon today." It was like a whole thing with some of these texts, and they still hit me to this day, and it's cool,
It's fine.
But it was always like, I always had a way to get back at them. But this barbecue was like, let's do it all. But then I was all like, wow, we got a lot of people. So how are we going to do that? So I had to go out and get a barbecue trailer, like a 6-foot trailer.
But the idea of this is 25 shows. People are working hard. They needed to cut loose. People needed a break. They needed something to relax. And when you allowed people to all come to this, like the text that you had a beef with here or there, it sounds like a lot of people had a moment to just breathe and talk and chill out and then get crazy, cut loose a lot.
Yeah, so it was very interesting about. But I was like, all of a sudden I had to try to figure this out. So we got a trailer. One time we had a PBR sponsor on the tour, and they brought the PBR barbecue. It was designed. They let me barbecue, and it looked like a PBR can.
Right, cool.
And we brought that on the road. But then that's where the advent of the barbecue bands would come in. Someone that could haul that trailer, because we had to leave. Like if bus call, and if you're on tour, there's going to be a bus call.
Right.
And that could be, whatever the distance to the next city was. So that could be anywhere from, 10 o'clock to 2 in the morning, or even a little later. But what we would do is we'd have to leave, and this barbecue has hot coals on.
Right.
So this barbecue band would travel with us. I would give them a block of money each day. They'd go to Sam's Club or Costco and buy up all the burgers and veggie burgers they could find and come. And their job was to cook for the rest of the bands.
So was it barbecue band? Did it change from like week to week, or was it through the entire show? This was the barbecue band.
These bands were hardcore. They went out and did the whole tour.
Wow.
They were usually in the.
So they were playing and cooking and cleaning and playing and cooking and cleaning and playing and cooking.
And cooking. Now, I would give them money, and they would get paid for their set, and then they had a tip jar out there, which I think became pretty good at times for people, especially like when there was like, we bring Fletcher up a lot, but like he had his band one time. He had the first barbecue band. This was me and Fletcher agreeing that we need to do this. And he goes, I have a band, 98 Mute, I think was our first barbecue band. And he would stand there and like shake people down for tip money. Like, it was like donation, tip.
Yeah, I've seen pictures
donation,
of Fletcher, so definitely tipping.
Yeah. So the band was doing fine. They were out there working, and this was a way for them to meet other people. And we would gather at the barbecue each evening, and then it started to transfer into this whole concept that after 9 hours of music, what else do we need at a barbecue? More music. And more music. So, it started out like DJs and some music. Someone have a boom box.
It sounds like a blast.
Oh, it was awesome because, when I work, you join a PTA when your kids are in school. And they'll have like 8 meetings to decide on an event. Like you'll have to go through this whole process and committees and stuff. Literally, I could just call like Tiki Barbecue, and literally within 6 hours there'd be decorations. We'd find we'd find a local steel drum wedding guy to come and play. We could pull off events like in a few hours that were, and this grew into things like the Prom, which we'll do, we had a Prom because
so you would have theme barbecues.
Theme barbecues, and sponsors would come in and sponsor. ASCAP would give us money for the barbecues, and on those nights
But this is all under the guise of a tour, and the call at 10 or 2 or whatever, you got to go to the next show. It kind of reminds me of Gilligan's Island. Whenever they threw a party, they had to use the resources they had locally and have whatever theme.
Oh yeah, we'd be fighting in the back. Say, oh wow, look at this! Someone Motley Crue left something. Okay, we're gonna have an '80s metal party. It's like we'd be like, it'd be so much fun. But it got to this point where it was like the barbecues. We talk about creating jobs. We ended up having someone whose whole job each day was to kind of get the PA out of the trailer.
Just for the barbecue.
Yeah, with whatever band. And this was really cool because we had, Warped had a lot of different sounds and bands.
Of course.
So, we had this thing where it was like, I'd want these bands to be introduced to the rest of the bands. Like, if you came from a punk world, you're going to know all of them. But really one of the coolest things was me going, you're going to play one of the barbecues, okay? And I think this is great because this is a great transfer. Pepper was one of those bands.
Right.
Pepper was a band that, and they for me were perfect because I lived in Hawaii for a while. I remember all the families gathering on the beach every weekend, someone bringing out a ukulele, just music and jamming. So when I had the opportunity to work with these guys, it could not have been, I couldn't have been happier.
Wait. There was food there? That's really lame. You guys are just sharing with me now. I seriously thought the barbecue was like somewhere where there was just fire and beer everywhere. Just beer. Bud Light beer everywhere.
And Pepper was that kind of music, man. They brought the vibe. Like this band never wore shirts. They wore board shirts everywhere.
But I love that they could be really cool, mellow ska, and then just rip and be amazing. And you had mentioned something about, all different types of bands at the Warped Tour. I find that being able to be on this tour and get relationships outside of your genre or what lane that you would normally be in, this I see as a theme over 25 years has helped out other people. They build relationships. They meet new people.
I think we started to lose that, though, towards the end.
Really?
Yeah, we really did, because bands didn't meet until they came to the barbecue.
Really?
Like, you might be on tour, on the Warped Tour, and I'll never forget, like, Black Eyed Peas, not necessarily a Warped band, not necessarily known, and all of a sudden you look out, and they're hanging out, having drinks with Pennywise.
Right.
They're meeting No Effects. They're hanging out with these people. You judged people based on meeting them versus reading something on the internet. But you met these people, and you found that they were just like you, trying to figure out how to make a living, how to go out on the road, how hopefully some of their fans might come over and see you and like you, or, and if you didn't like their music, great. You hope that someone would see you and be a new fan of your own. That's what Warped Tour was about. There was no one that could draw 15, 20,000 people on that tour.
No way.
And you would have these things, and then it started breaking out. There was like gambling became like big,
Wait, gambling in the barbecue?
Barbecues. There was the poker tables that would be set up. They would, like, literally, you couldn't, like, the backstage would, like, sundown, poker tables, tiki bars, sometimes the
cornhole in the
cornhole tournaments. I mean, that was a big thing. DJs, music, and then it'll be like bands stacked up, like wanting to play the barbecue.
Oh, wanting to play the barbecue?
Yeah,
that's awesome. It sounds like a party that I want to go to and that should be on television.
I think everyone really enjoyed the barbecues. But it was also like there was a moment in time where I also had to look at things and go, the intensity. When you're working that many days in a row, it starts getting intense. You start getting like, you're going lack of sleep. You're going. So the barbecue intensity would go up. Like they would get wilder.
Oh, really? You would think it would be like a respite, but you're saying as intense as the show got, the barbecue got just as intense?
Yeah, as long as you went like day 16, 17 in a row, people are up all night. Some nights I actually had curfew.
No barbecue.
No barbecue. We called it the Nobacue.
Nobacue. That's a thing.
The Nobacue. That meant it was like dark.
Chill out and go to sleep, goddammit.
Get some rest, go to sleep. We got a big run. I know tomorrow's going to be a stormy day we're
fine, Kevin, we're fine.
There was a pace to the barbecues. They were really well, to be honest, they were very well thought out and planned.
Do you miss them?
I missed those times, but towards the end of the tour, I was like had to pace myself. Like I would be in bed most nights of the barbecue.
Really?
Because it was brutal. I mean, I was, most of my friends would come out for like a night or two and ride on the bus, and they go, "How do you do this? How do you do this for 2 months? I'm exhausted." And then you'd have those people on the buses, like they come out, they think they're going to party for 2 days, and you're like, dudes, you got we all chill, like there's.
But at least it was only 2 months. Could you imagine we're 10?
No, you couldn't have run this longer.
No way.
2 months. We were at the peak of time out on the Warped Tour. But you know what? Most people would say they would have gone home, done some laundry, got cleaned up, rested for a couple of days, and done it all over again. Because you
have to recognize some of these bands did just that. I mean, the Warped Tour was only a part of their entire year schedule. Now, maybe they didn't have the intensity that they would have experienced on the Warped Tour and the fun and the excitement. I mean, it sounds like a big party. It was work for a lot of people. But, man, what a barbecue I would love to have gone to.
Yeah, no, that last week was like, there was bands flying over for the European festival season. There was bands that were going overseas to play in Japan at some of the big Fuji Festival and some of these things. So it was really weird because you had this energy that built up all summer. And that was through working hard, playing hard, having this community. And that last day was always spooky. Everyone just kind of like, people are packing up gear, and trucks are picking up. People have to bail early, like, gotta leave. I'm dumping my bus. I'm getting on a plane. I got to be in Europe. Those were always moments, but it was that last barbecue, the closing night barbecue. I mean, those got legendary. But here's how it all worked, too, because we also saw that you don't want to leave a mess. Okay? And, and you can see, when you have a barbecue at your house, people can leave, it gets messy.
There's a lot of pressure on the barbecue band, too.
Well, no, we had a whistle. Like, there was a curfew. Like, midnight, they would get up, DJs would turn off, everyone bend over, pick up trash.
Oh, that's great.
And the site could be completely clean because we screwed up one time. We had I would never have the barbecue on the last night. One night I did in Atlanta, and I woke up on the tour bus because I wasn't flying out till the next day, and the place was disgusting. So we made this rule, like literally everyone knew if you were at the barbecue, you could blow a whistle at the end of the night, and every band and crew would bend over and start picking up trash. Now, I think it's shocked, like sometimes when friends or family of those bands were there, that they actually had to clean up. Like they were like, I'm like rock and roll. Wait, we don't clean up behind us. No, we did. Yeah. So we tried to always leave it better. And then it was fun because the promoters would look forward to it.
So what would you say is probably the most memorable barbecue? You said it was like a lot of the end ones were, but what would you say was legendary?
I think we'll have to ask the fans at some point, like the 10 greatest barbecues, like the people that toured with us. I need you guys to leave a comment on what was your favorite barbecue, because we'll want to dig up clips of that. But for me, that was one night.
And we want all the dirt, too, by the way. Just make that note there in your comment.
What dirt? Like dirt?
Like, no, like dirt? Not the dirt that they cleaned up at the end, but all the fun stuff. You know what I'm talking about.
I mean, literally, these parties were a lot of people dancing, a lot of people had fun. And that was the coolest thing for me, because my wife was like, whoever would think that you would let your teenage daughters and feel like they were at the safest place being out on a tour. We talk a lot about that, as they were growing up as teenagers here. I would have been on the road, and Fran would have been like worried that they were out at night, or where were they in Southern California on a summer night, and she knew they were in this parking lot, and there was a dance party going on, and all their like big brothers and uncles and sisters and family were looking out for them, and also knowing that they had a bus call, like they had to be on the bus at 11 o'clock at night. And, we all had to be on the bus. So that bus call was like always set. But then you'd have to leave the barbecue band behind, get kind of tidy up the last little bit, put the coals out. I always had this vision one time of the
whole camp catching on fire.
Like pulling this barbecue trailer down the road and sparks flying out across the country. And then a fire chief's trying to investigate, why are we having all these big brush fires? And his kid has like a map of the Warped Tour with all the city's dates.
Oh, God.
And they match up like perfectly. It'd be a great CSI or something. It matches up perfectly with these big brush fires broke out like the day before this tour came to town.
I'm sure nothing like that ever happened.
So they would put out the barbecue, we would move, they would come the next day, and this went on for many, many years, and we went through multiple barbecues, big trailer barbecues. I really had a lot of fun. I'd always pick my moments, and those moments became a little farther apart towards the end because it's exhausting.
It's a lot of work.
So I would, get out there and buy like 100 pounds of tri-tip and vegetables and ribs, and I would load this thing up at like 8 in the morning and cook all day long. And I found for my ability was, I always believe that when someone's barbecuing for some reason, it equalizes. People feel comfortable to come and talk to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think some people were like a little maybe intimidated. Like, I don't know why. I was always felt I was accessible.
Well, you were the boss.
But you know what? We sit there over the grill. We'd have an ice chest of beer, some soda, some waters. And then people would just come by and go, hey, what's going on?
It disarms a lot of people, of course. It's wonderful, wonderful. But I think for me, the idea of knowing the history of the Warped Tour and who was at these barbecues and how they were, it would have been historic to see some of the people that were hanging out and just chilling at the barbecue. Who would you say are some of the most memorable bands that were the barbecue bands, and you said they were full season, right?
Oh, we had, bands like Wanted Dead would be the barbecue band. We're going to track all these people down and get their stories because they have to tell their story.
Sure.
They were living in their bubble, of how they work, but a lot of them would get offered other tours. They would get spots for being nice, just working hard and meeting these other bands out on the road. If I had to name my favorite barbecue, though, it would have been in Philadelphia. I think it had rained all day. It's like those days where you're just like grinding the day, grinding the show. We had a short drive because when you get up into that quadrant, all we did was go from Philly out to Long Island. So you're talking about a 50-mile drive.
Right.
And then you're coming, you're playing another show in Jersey on the Sunday. So it's another 60, 80-mile drive. So we're not leaving until 4 a.m.
Right.
And that first Friday of that weekend, it was that run, I would say, like, no curfew on the barbecue. It's okay. We're going to go.
We're going to go for it.
Because you're in Camden, New Jersey. There's no rules there. You could just go for it. And we would run this barbecue. And one night, a band called the Bad Rabbits, who was one of my favorite bands. And anyone who saw them would realize how good band. But they came in and set up and started jamming. And they were like jamming old Motown songs. And it's funny, though, but you would think that people would want to hear like, oh, they're punk bands. They want to hear punk. No, they wanted to hear like reggae. They wanted to hear like
it's a barbecue.
Hip-hop barbecues. It was like everyone wanted to hear music.
Right.
And Bad Rabbits playing like covers of, Motown and soul songs and all this stuff. And everyone knows those songs, so other artists felt comfortable jumping up and singing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we had a band called Gym Class Heroes, and Travie McCoy all of a sudden shows up, and he starts DJing. And, Pepper got in there and started singing. So it was like this jam. And everyone's like, yeah, we need to wind the barbecue down. And I'm like, no, keep it going. Keep the barbecue going. I'm having fun. I'm going to go to a barbecue. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Go.
We got 2 more hours.
We're not leaving until 5 in the morning. We don't have to load in until 7 up in Long Island. And, that would
does sound exhausting.
That would start this weekend. And then it became known as like the Forfini Warped Tour East Coast Barbecue.
Right.
And that was a psychology thing for me too, because there was other people trying to throw things like Warped Tour. Okay? There was other people that were trying to do events. But when we went to New York, it was like on. It was like the whole New York music industry would come out. Right. And these were friends of mine. These people I would see in New York. Like you could go to New York and just say, I'm going to go beat you everyone at a bar at the Niagara, and like 100 people would show up. Right. Now most of them have moved here or live in Nashville. But there was a moment in time when it was like everyone would show up. They would load up and get cars. And my friends, Lords of Brooklyn, Caves, he had a reunion of his act one night backstage. Like this band was big in 95. They played the first Warped Tour of one show. And they come back and now they're grown men. And they did a reunion backstage at Warped Tour where it was like very hip hop, very, Brooklyn style. So everything was always New York style. People are bringing sausages from like, the grinder milled out in Williamsburg. And, it was like this on. And then it was like party. And there was one night where I remember Katy Perry was, kind of being voted. It was towards the end of the tour, was being voted the laziest person on Warped Tour.
Ow!
Like they did superlatives. And I had seen the voting, and she was going to win laziest person on Warped Tour. And this girl was working so hard. She was blowing up with Kiss the Girl.
Right.
She was doing like radio or television in the morning, radio, coming back, doing her set, sitting in a booth, signing autographs, working. And she was going to be laziest person on Warped Tour. And I go to her, hey, Katy, I hate to tell you, and I start asking around like, why is Katy so lazy? And they go, oh, she's never at the barbecues. That's how you got judged. Like, you're never at the barbecue. And she goes, you know what? Get me a bottle of Patron. And,
oh, no.
And I think it was CJ Ramone came out. So like some of my old punk friends, and there was this jam band playing.
So she got busted for not coming to the barbecue. So it was like a thing, right? Like if you didn't show up to the barbecue.
Being seen at the barbecue, kind of like. Thing. But that's how the Warped Tour. You don't come to the barbecue, you're lazy. She's working her ass off, like
right, of course.
Slaving today. And she just goes, get me a bottle of Patron. So of course I have to get the biggest one I could find. It's like, and there's just Katy just. I don't know if she now, but as a mom and grown up, but
I'm sure she just had one sip of Patron and she
just
was
went
an
for
angel
it that
the entire
night. And literally the next day, by now we're down like Englishtown Racetrack in New Jersey. I've kidnapped like 4 of my friends who have passed out in the bus. Like these are record label presidents and
Right.
vice presidents. They're just like sleeping on my floor of my bus.
Will remain unnamed.
Joe Calitri. And then we take down, and I have to figure out, like, it's great, all fun when it's happening, but then I got to realize I got to get them home. Like, it's morning. Not only do I have to, like, to get the show up.
No Uber at this time, by the way.
No. It's like, luckily they brought this awesome woman. Her name is Cindy Lynott, and she's done very well in the music business. But she was kind of like woke up and goes, holy crap, we have to get back to New York City. We're in southern New Jersey now. How did this happen? You know, and so we get them arranged to go home. And now, you know, I'm trying to load in a show, and I'll admit I was a little hungover. Like, I got to deal with this. It's like New Jersey too. Right. And then Katy Perry's road manager comes up to me and she goes, oh, maybe you should come hold her hair back because she's not doing that good this morning. Katy Perry's not feeling so good. So. But it was like weird, you know, but it was never, you know, it was like you have your moments, you know, and you let loose. And that was my thing. And the psychology of that was like show people that the Warped Tour, like it's great. You can go out and maybe try to do your own thing, but you're going to have to one-up us in everything we do. And that barbecue was legendary. Sure. And you know what? It got the industry talking about the community of Warped Tour. They had a great memory. They went back into New York City. And I'd come back into New York in September, October to start up about the next year. And the first thing they wanted to talk about was the barbecue. And that's how you break it down. You broke down, you know, if you can have common ground with people, it is a business we're in. But the barbecue broke down so many fun things in my life. And I do miss that. But, you know, anyone who's been to my house, I have some pretty good barbecues here.
My favorite quote is that, I have to admit I was a little hungover, but I had to load in the next day, and it was Jersey, so there's that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We love Jersey. We love Jersey. Kevin loves Jersey. Kevin, say you love Jersey.
I love Jersey.
Hey, come on.
But if you live in Jersey, you know what I'm saying. This is a combo. This is a combo. Charity and one of my good friends who I actually met when I was walking. I was speaking at the Central Florida Music Conference. I was doing a keynote. And I was walking, and it was a wet night. It was rainy, kind of drizzly. Everything's always rainy and drizzly. But I hear the sound of this girl's voice, like a block away. And I go, I got to go hear this. And I wandered over there. I stood by the side of the stage, and that's where I met Beebs. And I said, wow, you're great. Like, you're awesome. I want to bring you on Warped Tour. Oh, wait, but I'm booked for next year. So I want you to come and play my barbecue when we're in Orlando.
I didn't realize that's how she started on the Warped Tour.
Yeah.
So okay, let me get this straight. You were booked for the next season, all booked up, bands were done. You saw her and you said, come and just play the barbecue. And she said, yes.
Yeah, of course, she was stoked. She was like, I want to come play the barbecue. And of course, I have to tell all my, you know, Lisa Brownlee and all, hey, I have my friend's band. They need passes. They're going to need PA. And she started having like, Beebs gets what she wants. She kind of and she's like asking for special PA at the barbecue. And they're like, we got this PA. She goes, do you have any monitors? And of course, I'm like, bring some monitors over from one of the stages. We set up by the lake. We had a great spot I always have great spots for my bus. And we set up the tiki torches. There's always going to be tiki torches fix everything. So the torches come out, the lights come out. And Beebs rocked the party.
That's great.
And then I brought her on the next tour with me. She played at the barbecues. Anytime Beebs will sing with it. She's got a great voice. She can get up and sing with anyone.
I think I met her here one time at your house.
Absolutely.
She came in. I was on the piano and she came and played with me. She brought her guitar.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yes.
It was
totally.
awesome.
That's her. We're going to highlight her charity on this event because she's worked with some people who've been associated loosely with Warped, Soma Snake Oil, and some other people. And
she does a lot of charity work too, doesn't she?
Yeah, and this charity work she's going to talk about is the Sidewalk Project. So it's kind of a blending with Beebs tonight to wrap up the show. Is going to be Beebs talking about being on Warped Tour and her work with this charity.
Yeah, and she has a kick-ass show too. I've seen some of her stuff.
The first year you saw us, you're like, I want you on all of Warped Tour, but there's no more room this year. So this year you're going to come play my barbecue in Orlando, and next year you're going to be on the tour. And I was like, barbecue, okay, let's go.
Right, you know, and that, you know, you got the kind of the it's like you came down and it was in Orlando, and I remember by the side of the lake in Orlando, I had my bus parked out there. It's always a special spot I like to park my bus. It was like view of the water there. And I told everyone, you have to come to this barbecue. And we had a big turnout. I think the majority of the tour came out to watch you play out there on the grass.
Yeah, it was super. I remember that was the first day I met Lisa Brownlee and a bunch of the production, and I remember being so stoked that the majority of production people I was meeting were women. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, Warped Tour is run by chicks. This is so cool. Like,
you know, and they're going to be a little hard when they first meet you, but they liked you. I mean, you know how they are. They're just like, oh, you're some band Kevin met that has to play at the barbecue tonight. Like,
they're like, great. I'll try to follow up on the 20 bands Kevin just promised Warped Tour to next year.
You know, but we set up the PA. We always had that PA, and you guys came down, and you also met other bands that night, like right away. I think you started meeting people hanging around the barbecue.
Yeah, I think you had introduced me to Ronnie Radke. And I remember, like, I didn't know, like, this newer scene of Warped Tour musicians at that time. And I remember you're like, this is Ronnie. And I remember you're like, he's super popular on Warped Tour. And he's like, yeah, I just got out of prison a year ago. And I'm like, cool. How's your band so popular? And he just got out of prison a year ago. And he said, well, you know, I went to prison. And I was like, okay, cool. And then that was kind of the end of our interaction that day. But I was like, okay, so maybe you have to be extreme to be popular on Warped Tour. I didn't know what to think about all that. But
you got to cut somebody to be popular on Warped Tour.
Yeah, so, you know, she ended up pulling it together. It was funny because, like, Beebs self-funds. She's got that same thing, that hustle about her. But, you know, sometimes if you're a band in Florida, it's hard to get out of Florida. Because you know why? You have to go through Mississippi. You know, it's no, that's like my joke. It's like,
well, you're getting in trouble today.
I am. It's like
he loves Mississippi. He loves Florida. He loves Jersey.
Well, Florida for fishing is great. It's one of my favorite places to go fishing. You know, but there's so much good music talent down there, and they tour through Florida. They'll play 20 venues there and just kind of playing, but it does sometimes hard to break out.
She's still in Florida? Is that where the interview was?
No, she is back here. She's living in Southern California.
Okay, cool.
She's been back down there, though. And then, you know, the coolest thing about her is Beebs just has a good spirit. You met her, you know, she brings the good vibes. And this led to this project that she works with these other people called the Sidewalk Project. And
which is really cool.
And let's let her tell us about it.
The Sidewalk Project was created out of bringing music and art to marginalized communities, specifically the houseless communities, with the idea that if you can give artists and creatives the tools that they need to create, especially in a time when they're so down on their luck, you can start helping bring people's mental headspace to a better space. And if you think about people who are homeless, you know, you're being walked by every day, completely ignored by society. You're already down on your luck. There's a lot of variances to the whole situation, and none of it is really bringing your mental headspace up to kind of figure out what the next move is for yourself and in your journey. And so it started with, you know, at the beginning, Stacy and Johnny from Old Man Merkley and Jeff from the Agrolites. They had this little Sidewalk Project band, and they would learn covers and go into the streets and, you know, get people to sing and freestyle and get their thoughts out, and also bring art supplies and doing murals with the community. And I remember the first video I saw was of this woman, Radio, and she does this At Last cover with them, and that makes me cry every time I watch it. And it reminded me that, you know, we have to be there for one another. And mental health is a huge discussion for people. And I love that it's at the forefront of things now. But people, you know, even some of my close friends are like, oh, I don't know why you go into the homeless communities. Like, there's just people with mental health issues and they're on drugs. I was like, dude, I work in the entertainment industry. There's people with mental health issues and on drugs that live in houses. What does that have to do with basic human rights, you know? Right. And so, and going down there and starting to work with the Sidewalk Project, I found, the first time I went down to Skid Row, I was really nervous about going down there because I felt like I'm very empathic, so I felt like I would be so sad for people that it would overshadow me, any amount of help I could bring. And when I got down there, what I found was this insane sense of community. And Skid Row specifically is very much a community. It's existed for over 100 years. And I found this immense sense of freedom and community, although a very sad situation where 60,000 plus people are unhoused in the middle of the 5th largest economy in the world is ridiculous to me. But the community, the sense of community and talent that I found there was so moving. And honestly, a lot of people I talk to, whether they're on drugs or not, have the most profound things to say to me and tell me and remind me of. And I think that if people took the time to say hello to their neighbors that are living on the streets and just have a conversation, they would find a lot of enlightenment and perspective and, unity through that. But I think that our society is so divided that we just walk past people like they're not even there. And maybe it's that we don't want to face the mortality of our own situations. I'm not sure why that stigma and that interaction exists, but that's what's made me passionate about it. I don't even look at it as helping people, because quite honestly, the people of Skid Row and the San Diego community and the different houseless communities I've been to have taught me not to judge, taught me to be there for someone, taught me that I'm not really helping anyone. I'm simply giving someone support who may have not had support their whole life. And I'm being able to show up and listen to someone who may just needs a listening ear, because everyone else around them is in the same situation. So how much listening are they going to do, Right. And I found that it's not help. It's just us being human beings and good neighbors to each other and showing each other that we're here.
And I think that sense of empathy, and I know you're doing it in more cities than Los Angeles now, but Los Angeles is a very interesting city. And I think we've kind of seen with this pandemic, actually, how neighborhoods have actually come together, because you can't just kind of come in and out of them. You've kind of been locked into these neighborhoods, so you're walking the streets more. People are putting their extra fruits and vegetables out, maybe from their gardens, or things out in front of their homes.
You inspired me to do that. Yeah. I finally got to start a garden because I was home long enough, and I saw you leaving starter plants out for your neighbors. I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, because I always say, like, we need to learn how to do more stuff for ourselves so we feel more empowered. And part of that, growing a garden.
I put 100 seedlings out this weekend, and all but one was taken. The poor little guy brought them home. So he was a little crooked. I think he grew sideways. So, it's just those little things that I think maybe that we're seeing, that we're kind of all in this together. So the Sidewalk Project is, you do it in multiple cities now. San Diego?
So our main office, and since COVID, we ended up getting a grant for the LA office, and we also started a needle exchange. So we run a needle exchange and harm reduction out of the San Diego office, as well as doing wound care and other supplies to the community. So that's our main office. And then what we did was, what Soma did was put instructions and kind of guidelines out on the website of how you could start one in your own town. And because COVID gave us kind of all time to sit and focus and kind of be home, it spawned Sidewalk Project being tighter than ever, because we started doing Zoom calls weekly with all the different Sidewalk Project communities all over the country. And we were able to partner with other organizations as well. And it's been really beautiful to watch unfold since COVID too. I started working. We partnered with the lady Tara Busig here in San Diego, who has been on the forefront of the needle exchange process down here. Before Sidewalk Project established this needle exchange down in downtown LA, it was banned in the county for over 20 years. And I never thought about even doing this work and getting introduced to the needle exchange work, which a needle exchange supplies clean needles and harm reduction supplies to the user community. And apparently it was brought to me that it was a controversial subject. And I was like, why is this controversial? And I guess some people don't like that you give users clean supplies, but we're actually a public health service, so that when people do get to the point, if they want to be off whatever substance they're on, they didn't cause massive damage by contracting hepatitis or HIV or AIDS or now COVID. So, and it's beautiful because in my work with the needle exchange, a perspective I never thought I'd have when just working with the user community, there's an insane amount of self-care that goes into getting yourself to the needle exchange to get clean supplies. I can only imagine being like all out of it on whatever I'm on and having the foresight to be like, okay, I got to get myself clean supplies so that I can keep myself safe. There's a certain amount of self-care that goes into that act. And it's really beautiful. It's beautiful to connect with people. And I don't really see the difference between people being in a house on Xanax or Prozac or Adderall or oxycodone and people self-medicating in the streets on other substances. There's no difference to me. It's you have a society that's traumatized, whether it's racially, through gender, through just going through fucked up family situations. You have a whole society that's traumatized, and then we're acted we're expected to just walk around like nothing happened. And if we do talk about when things happen, that's the first thing they want to do is put us on drugs. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to recognize those things and those kind of double standards in society and flip the perspective so that you can just be a good neighbor and not judge people based on where they're at in their journey, you know?
So if anyone wanted to get involved, are you looking for people to get involved with the Sidewalk Project?
Yes.
How do they reach out to you guys?
We can always use help. Right now, I just got an email from Sidewalk yesterday saying we need supplies. We need hygiene supplies. We can't go through enough. We have a sock sponsor right now and a few other sponsors, but for supplies, but we always need constant hygiene supplies. If you would like to be involved in Sidewalk or find or figure out a way to start one in your town, you can go to the sidewalkproject.org. You can also message me on Instagram at Beebs Money or the Sidewalk Project or Stacy D. Any of us can point you in the right direction to help. But I think it's important for us to remember that although we're constantly inundated with bad news in the world and there's all this stuff and we're more divided than ever, the most important thing you can do right now is do something. You know what I mean? We can sit around and bitch on the internet all we want or bitch to each other, but if we're not being a member of our society in positive change, then we're just bitching. You know what I mean? Like, and just to give an example, like what Sidewalk Project taught me was to see people everywhere. You know, I never ignore a person now in any situation. And during COVID, I was on my way home and there was a guy holding a sign that he needed money and food. And I happened to have this extra mattress pad in my car. And I stopped and was like, hey man, do you need a bed? Because I have this bed. He's like, yeah. I said, meet me at the gas station. So long story short, we talk. He's like, why did you stop? And I said, because I work with Sidewalk Project. This is what they taught me. It was started in the punk rock community. He's like, I was in a punk rock band. And I was like, yeah, I was started by my friends, And he's like, I know Emily. And I'm like, no way, this guy knows Emily from Punk Rock.
Emily. That's someone else we'll be interviewing at some point. Emily.
Yeah, I'm like, no way, this guy knows Emily. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I just so happened, I think, to have got my stimulus check. And it's been rough for musicians too, but I had the extra money. I got the guy a phone. He said he needed a phone. And I just pulled out the money from the ATM, which I've never done, gave him the money for the phone. Said, I got to go. I had chickens in my car too. Long story, but I was like, I got to go drop these chickens off.
Wait, chickens in your car?
I just picked up some new chickens for my house. And so I had chickens shitting all over my car as I'm talking to this guy. And I'm like, I got to go. I'll be back. I'll come back. And he told me where he was going to put the mattress pad. I was like, I'll be back. I'll come find you. Came back home, dropped the chickens off, got a hygiene kit together, went to go find him, couldn't find him. I give up. I'm like, oh, kind of bummed and disappointed, whatever he used the money for is his prerogative. I go run into the store. I get a text as I'm coming out of the store. Beebs, it's Josh. I got my phone. I was like, oh my God, where are you? And he was right outside where I had just stopped. And so we ended up stopping and talking for a while. Long story short, I worked with this guy over months. And it turns out Emily comes over. I haven't seen her in forever. She comes over. I said, I met this guy I've been working with. He said he knows you. She looks at his photo and just starts bawling her eyes out. She's like, I'm like, who is this guy? What did he do to you? I'm like, her reaction was so gnarly. And she goes, that's our friend. We've been looking for him for a year. And I was like, what? He was coming off fentanyl and a lot of drugs, you know, and so I linked them. They started going to sober meetings together. I keep working with him. I drive him to his job interviews. He texted me while I was gone this last week and said, Beebs, I just want to say thank you so much. I have a house. I have a job. I have a car. I have the best roommate ever. Thank you for believing in me. Because ultimately he got himself to the meetings at the community resource center. I just pointed him in directions and told him that I supported him and believed in him. I didn't really do anything other than that. But I also witnessed how hard and difficult it is for someone coming off the streets to get into housing. All the housing we were trying to get him into, all the sober living was filled up. All the shelters were filled up. It took a lot, you know, and so when people say, well, I don't understand why people can't just get off the streets, it's hard. There's not enough bridge housing. There's not enough sober living. There's not enough shelters to accommodate the population. And so it takes a lot, you know, and but I can't save the world. None of us can, but we can be a part of our community and we can see people and we can help each other and believe in each other. And I think ultimately, when I look at a world filled with so much pain and so much judgment, I realize that all people really need is for someone to believe in them. And see them. And that might be the most powerful gift we have. And that doesn't take any money, you know?
I think it's amazing that she's struggling too. She's an artist during COVID, and she got a stimulus check like a lot of people who needed it did, and she chose to take some of that stimulus check and help this guy out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky to come across all these people. You meet a lot of people out in the music business, and you come across a lot of people, and then you start to really realize who's going to be. As in Shaggy always says, who's gonna have your back when it's all done? That was a line in one of his songs I always listen to, and it's like people like Beebs, just doing good things out there day to day, just somehow just finds, and she has that energy that just is great. So, I really thought it would be great to highlight the Sidewalk Project right now, because we are dealing with, and we're looking at another wave of homeless. Right now
100%.
Everyone's rents are being deferred, and there's all these programs, but there's going to be a comeuppance for this society coming up very quickly here. And I think we all have to look within, and just if we can help in any way we can, we're going to have to think about it.
Well, it seems like she's doing it. And the way that you brought her in to your community by starting her with saying, I really wish I could book you on the band, but there's this barbecue you can play.
So the barbecue's lasted now a very long relationship. We talk all the time. We catch up. She's always there. She's part of our family. She's been to Thanksgiving up at the house.
Of course.
She's been playing guitar with you at the piano,
Maybe someday the barbecue might come back on national television.
Yeah, Tony's looking forward to that. I would be too, and for that, we'll get a matching shirt. We'll go get some mustard shirts for mustard shorts over there. But we also have to talk about positivity and how that community was. And, Pepper kind of summed it up one day.
Of course, there's the music, there's the sets, there's the magic that's happening throughout the day. But as far as offstage, that's such an important aspect of the Warped Tour as well. So the barbecue was the absolute key to do that. And just I go back to the point that it's just everyone is just everyone at the barbecue, because I mean half the time you can't even see who's there. It's just
the barbecue lighting was definitely not on the priority list.
Yeah, and that added to it, because it was just it wasn't that was so and so from that band and that's so and so from that band. It's just a group of like-minded individuals that would always interchange, because some people would be tired and they would go to sleep earlier. Some people would have a big day and they wouldn't make the barbecue. But that's what also kept it interesting is, who's going to be at the barbecue tonight? You know what I mean? Playing? It was like Cleo, think about showing up to, we'd show up to Sack and Save parking lot to meet everyone to go party when we were 15 or 16 years old, because that was the meeting ground that everyone would meet up, and then you would disperse and come up with a plan, and you'd go to your parties or your beach parties or whatever it was. And it's almost like the barbecue was like that, where you're like, who's going to be there? I can't wait to find out. I hope so-and-so's there. I hope this person's there and whatnot. So I just like the ultimate sense of community, I think. And it was so, and it was so well, especially in the older days. And I don't know if this was just my personal opinion, but in the older days, when we first started doing Warped Tour, when you had your Fletchers and you had people like that were almost your elder statesmen that I don't know, that could kind of like keep things together, put people in check if you needed to. Like
it wasn't their first go round.
Yeah.
Like a Warped Tour can be a very exciting thing for especially like brand new bands and whatnot. And so here you have like people to help them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, pump the brakes over here real quick.
Yeah. I think about it as like a lineup in at a surf spot. You know what I mean? There's like your Fletchers that have been surfing there for 20 years. And then there's
also respect, or you get slaps.
Yeah. Or then there's your younger kids that are just starting surfing. So they're going to have to sit a little bit more inside. You know what I mean? And kind of like there's, Yeah.
It was you touched on it a little bit, and there's so many things you hit on in the sense of, I think that was a lot with the bands, and that's where you brought it. You wanted to create your space to help production by bringing the tiki bars and things. And Fletcher, sometimes he would check people with a slab of meat in the face, like if they did it wrong. He did some of those things. Join our Patreon to hear the full-length interviews. We're actually getting a lot of interviews on there, a lot of stacked-up interviews that go into depth a lot more. And we want to thank Reagan Brennan for throwing in a few dollars into the tip jar to keep this podcast rolling. Thank you, Reagan. Thank you very much. So be sure to make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook to get yourself an interview and be on the show. This came from Lydia Tavera when I asked if anyone had anything special about that happened to him at the barbecue. She said, the prom barbecue in 2018, I had one too many and told someone I had met at another barbecue, Cuyahoga Falls, that I really liked him, and that was Isaac Lamb, but I felt like we had hit a wall since he didn't ask me to the prom. Fast forward 2.5 years, and we are married and have 2 dogs. Dreams do come true. Also possibly worth noting that without the barbecues, not sure we would have ever met. He's in Kubla Khan, so very much a monster band. And despite working for Epitaph, I really didn't frequent those stages or talk to many of those bands. So would 100% attribute everything to those barbecues. That said, thank you for making it all possible. Grateful to have been a part of the legacy. It's always nice to see that Warped love came from the barbecue. Congratulations, Lydia and Isaac, and I hope to see you down the road. Subscribe to us on YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts to know when new episodes come out. And also text us any topics you want to hear at 818-863-6445. That's 818-863-6445. I want to thank my co-host, Tony Aratia.
I want to thank you.
My producer, Xavier. My other producer, Vivian. Our social media guru, Beata Shemtov. Some graphics were done by Sierra Lyman. Inspiration by Sabrine and Fran. And of course, the most important person on the show, Diego Aratia, who's now going to bring us out of here.